In the thriving city of Loduma, where tall buildings touched the clouds and the streets never slept, lived a powerful couple, Chief Mako and his wife, Madam Terra. They were the kind of people who shook hands with governors and flew to 3 countries in a week. Rich, respected, and always busy. But in all their greatness, they had one soft spot, their only child, a quiet 6-year-old boy named Lady. Lady was a sweet child, with big eyes full of questions and a heart that longed for attention. But with his parents always working or traveling, he spent most of his time alone in their large, silent mansion. Housekeepers came and went. Tutors tried to keep him busy. But none of them stayed long enough to know him. One rainy evening, Madame Terra sat in her office, her phone pressed to her ear. "I need someone different," she said. "Someone young but responsible. Someone who can care for Lady like a big sister." Her cousin from the village had an idea. "There's Zoe," she said. "My neighbor's daughter. She's 17. Very smart. Very respectful. She's been helping care for her younger siblings since she was a child." That night, Madame Terra called Zoe's family. "Bring her to the city. We'll pay her well. She'll stay in our home, attend a good school, and help with Lady." Zoe's parents hesitated. Their only daughter. To the big city. But the chance for a better education, a better life, it was too big to refuse. So, the next weekend, Zoe arrived in Loduma with a small bag of clothes and a heart full of hope. She stood at the gate of the grand mansion, wide-eyed at the glass walls and flower gardens. She had never seen anything like it. Inside, Lady was playing with building blocks, quietly humming to himself. When Madame Terra brought Zoe to him, he looked up shyly. "This is your new big sister," Madame Terra said, smiling. "Her name is Zoe. She'll take care of you while Mama and Papa are at work." Zoe knelt down to Lady's level and offered a gentle smile. "Hello, Lady. I hope we can be friends." He nodded slowly, curious but unsure. Over the next few days, Zoe did everything right. She made Lady's breakfast, packed his school bag, walked him to the gate, and even read him bedtime stories. She bathed him like a big sister would and listened to him talk about his favorite cartoons. Lady began to smile more. He laughed when Zoe made funny faces and asked her to sit next to him during his cartoons. For the first time in a long while, someone was truly present in his world. To Madame Terra, it seemed like a miracle. Finally, she told Chief Mako one evening, "Someone who gets him. She's perfect." But behind Zoe's polite smiles and careful walk, something else was growing. Zoe was alone. Though she slept in a beautiful room and wore clean clothes, her heart felt empty. She missed her family. She didn't know anyone in Loduma. The elite school she now attended was full of children who laughed in groups and whispered secrets she didn't understand. She saw girls giggling about boys. She saw things she had never seen in her village, closeness, hugs that lingered too long, touches that made her curious. And slowly, dangerously, her curiosity began to follow her home. At first, everything still looked perfect on the outside. Zoe woke up early each morning, brushed Lady's hair, prepared his favorite cocoa cereal, and walked him to the school bus. Neighbors who saw them thought they were siblings, always together, always smiling. To everyone else, Zoe was doing an amazing job. But inside, something was slowly shifting. Zoe had never lived away from her family before. The mansion, though beautiful, felt cold at night. Madame Terra and Chief Mako were hardly home, and when they were, their attention was brief. A wave. A quick thank you. Then more meetings, more trips. Zoe would sit alone in the staff quarters at night, scrolling through her cheap phone, staring at pictures of her old school friends back in the village. She missed them. She missed laughter that was real. She missed her younger siblings who would fall asleep in her arms. Here, she had Lady, and only Lady. And Lady adored her. He called her Sissy Zay and followed her everywhere. His little hands reached for hers without fear. His laughter came easily around her. She was his safe place, his comfort. Zay liked the feeling. It gave her purpose. It gave her power. But slowly, that power started confusing her. One day after school, Zoe sat on the couch flipping through her school notebook while Lady played nearby with his toy car. The car rolled under the couch. He bent to get it but slipped and bumped his knee. He let out a soft cry. Zoe rushed to him quickly. "Lady, are you okay?" He nodded with watery eyes. She picked him up, sat him on her lap, and kissed his forehead. "Don't cry. I'm here." She rocked him gently, but her hand stayed on him longer than needed. Her hug became tight. Her touch moved from comfort to something strange, even she didn't understand why. Lady shifted uncomfortably in her arms. "You don't like hugs?" Zay asked with a smile, trying to make it playful. "I do," he whispered. But not too long. She forced a laugh and let him go. But inside, she felt a sting, a mix of rejection and confusion. Why didn't he enjoy her closeness? Didn't he love her like she loved him? From that day, her touches became more frequent. What started as innocent, hand-holding, back-patting, began to feel different. Her hugs lasted longer. Her eyes watched him when he played, not like a sister, but like someone hungry for something missing. And Lady, he noticed. He began sitting farther away when they watched cartoons. He avoided her eyes when she tried to pull him close. He didn't know how to explain it, but his young heart knew something wasn't right. Zay didn't stop. In fact, she grew more frustrated. The more Lady pulled away, the more she tried to bring him back. Sometimes she scolded him. "Why don't you let me hug you like before?" she asked one evening. "I don't know," he mumbled. She frowned and turned away, feeling angry without knowing why. "You don't love me anymore," she whispered to herself. At school, Zay's days were no better. The rich kids still ignored her. She still ate lunch alone. She overheard things, stories of stolen kisses and hidden phone calls between boys and girls. She didn't understand all of it, but it made her feel even more left out. Even more curious. And that curiosity, she brought it home with her. The boundaries between right and wrong, love and loneliness, care and control, began to fade in her mind. Zoe thought she was just being affectionate. Just showing love. But Lady's shrinking voice and retreating eyes told another story. The story of a boy who was starting to feel afraid. Lady no longer smiled as much. His day started with silence and ended with sighs. He still sat beside Zoe at dinner and let her tie his shoelaces, but his eyes no longer sparkled. The boy who once ran around the living room with toy airplanes now stayed in his room, drawing quietly or staring at the wall. Zoe noticed. But instead of pulling back, she pushed harder. "Why are you acting like this?" she asked him one evening after bath time. "Did I do something wrong?" Lady didn't answer. He just shook his head and kept his eyes on the floor. "Talk to me, Lady," she said, her voice sharp. "I'm tired," he mumbled. Zoe frowned. "I'm trying to take care of you. I'm the only one who's here for you. You know that, right?" He nodded again, more out of fear than understanding. At school, Lady's teachers noticed the change too. He stopped participating in class. During recess, he sat alone under the tree where he used to play tag with his classmates. He had once been a joyful little boy, now he looked like someone carrying a heavy secret. "Is everything okay at home?" one teacher asked gently during lunch. Lady shrugged. "I don't know." The teacher made a note to call his parents, but as always, Chief Mako and Madam Terra were hard to reach. Meetings. Flights. Events. They trusted Zoe. She sent daily updates by message. Lady is fine. He ate well. He did his homework. All is okay. But all was not okay. At home, things were getting worse. Zoe had grown more possessive, more controlling. She didn't allow the housekeeper, Mama Dora, to help Lady anymore. "He's my responsibility," she said. Mama Dora, an old woman with eyes that missed nothing, watched Zoe closely. She noticed Lady's quiet flinches. His sudden silence when Zoe entered the room. The way he clung to her apron when Zoe wasn't looking. "Something's not right," she whispered to the driver one morning. "That boy doesn't laugh anymore." One afternoon, after school, Zoe took Lady to the bathroom. Bath time used to be simple. Quick. Routine. But now, Lady dreaded it. Zoe's hands lingered in places that made him squirm. She told him to stop crying. She said she was only helping. "Don't be a baby," she would say when he turned his face away. "This is how sisters take care of brothers." But Lady didn't feel safe. He started asking to bed himself. He told her he was old enough. But Zoe refused. "You'll make a mess," she insisted. "I'm here for a reason." One night, he cried softly as she wiped him dry. "Please. I don't like this," he whispered. Zoe froze. "Don't say that," she said sharply. "You don't mean it." "I do," he said, his voice shaking. She stood still, her hands trembling. A storm swirled inside her, confusion, anger, shame. She didn't know how to stop. She didn't know why she had even started. Zoe left the room and locked herself in her own. For the first time, she cried. Deep, painful sobs that soaked her pillow. She wasn't sure what was happening to her. She thought she was doing everything right. But something inside her had gone wrong, and now even Lady didn't want her near. But the next day, she pretended nothing had changed. And Lady? He smiled less. He spoke less. He stopped drawing. Even Mama Dora noticed the way he stared into space. Something dark was growing in that house, and nobody with power was around to see it. The morning sun rose over Loduma, painting the city in gold, but inside the Meko household, the air felt heavy. Lady sat on the couch, his small hands gripping his stuffed lion. Zoe had just finished dressing him for school, but he hadn't said a word all morning. His eyes stayed low. His lips stayed pressed. Zoe tried to cheer him up. Want pancakes today? He shook his head. How about we play your favorite game after school? He shrugged. She sighed, frustration building inside her. She didn't know how to fix things anymore. She felt like she was sleeping, like everything around her was falling apart. But still, she followed the routine, packed his lunch, combed his hair, sent him off. Then she returned home, sat on the edge of her bed, and stared at the wall. That same day, Madame Terra sat in a boardroom downtown. She was preparing to give a presentation to foreign investors when she suddenly gasped. Her briefcase. She had left it at home, the one with all the files she needed. Without wasting time, she grabbed her car keys and left the office. I'll be back in 20 minutes, she told her assistant. Hold the meeting if I'm late. Back at the mansion, Zoe was in Lady's room. The silence around her felt deafening, and her thoughts were tangled. She didn't know what she was doing anymore, whether she was caring for Lady or clinging to him to fill her own emptiness. When Lady returned from school, she took him by the hand and walked him to the bathroom again. Let me help you get clean, she said softly. Lady froze. Can I do it myself today? No, she replied quickly. Just like always. As she reached for the towel, the front door opened downstairs. Madame Terra rushed inside, her heels clicking sharply on the tiled floor. Zoe, she called. Did you see my brown leather bag? No response. She moved up the staircase, her eyes scanning the clean hallway. Then, from Lady's room, she heard a voice. Not loud. Not clear. But something in her mother's heart told her to stop and listen. Stay still, Zoe whispered behind the door. Lady's small voice followed. I don't want to. Madame Terra's blood turned cold. She moved quietly toward the door, her heartbeat pounding like a drum. Her hand gripped the doorknob. She pushed it open. And then she froze. What she saw in that moment stole the breath from her lungs. Zoe was kneeling in front of Lady, her hands in a place no child should ever experience. Lady stood still, his little face blank, his eyes far away like he had left his body just to survive. What are you doing? Madame Terra's scream shattered the room. Zoe jumped back, falling onto the floor. Her face went white with shock. Madame Terra stormed forward, yanking Zoe by the arm. How dare you touch my son? How dare you? Lady backed into the corner of the room, his small frame shaking. Zoe tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Tears rushed down her cheeks. I didn't mean to, I was just... Shut your mouth. Madame Terra shouted. She ran to Lady, pulled him close, and wrapped her arms around him. It's okay, baby. Mama's here now. But the damage had already been done. She picked up her phone and called the police. Then, through tears of anger and pain, she called Zoe's parents. The silence in the mansion was now filled with rage, sorrow, and a truth that could no longer hide. Everything had changed. And the village would never forget what happened next. The police arrived within 20 minutes. Their flashing lights painted the once quiet street in red and blue. Neighbors peeked through windows. Whispers began before anyone even stepped out of the house. Zoe sat silently on the couch, her head down, her hands trembling in her lap. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her voice lost in shame. She didn't resist when the officers handcuffed her gently and led her outside. Madame Terra followed behind, holding tightly to Lady, who hadn't spoken a single word since the incident. His small body leaned into his mother's chest, but his face stayed blank, like someone who had gone too far into silence. Zoe's parents arrived just moments after the police left. Her mother, Mama Noki, rushed into the living room crying. Where is my daughter? What's going on? Madame Terra turned to her with eyes filled with fire. Your daughter touched my son in ways no child should ever be touched. Mama Noki gasped. She almost collapsed, but her husband, Baba Noki, caught her. What are you saying? He asked, his voice low and trembling. She has destroyed my boy's innocence, Madame Terra said, her voice cracking. I trusted her like my own. And this is how she repaid me. Mama Noki began to sob. No, no, no. Zoe would never. She did. Madame Terra shouted. I saw it with my own eyes. Your daughter will answer for what she's done. The room stood still, heavy with grief. Baba Noki looked to the floor, then to his wife. Let's go to the station, he said softly. We need to find her. They left without another word. That night, Madame Terra sat by Lady's bed. He lay curled under his blanket, staring at the ceiling. She stroked his hair, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I should have been here. I should have protected you. Lady didn't respond. She leaned down and kissed his forehead. You're safe now. Mama's here. Across town, Zoe sat in a police holding cell. Her face was pale, her eyes red, and her clothes wrinkled from the rough bench. She had stopped crying, but inside, she was falling apart. When her parents arrived, she couldn't even lift her head to look at them. Zoe, her mother said, gently kneeling beside her. Why? Why would you do this? Zoe's lips trembled. I I don't know, she whispered. I didn't mean to. I didn't know it was wrong at first. I just felt so alone. Bobanoki closed his eyes, pain squeezing his chest. You hurt a child. You've broken a family's trust. Do you understand that? Zoe nodded slowly, the shame consuming her. I was lost. I didn't know how to stop. Her mother took her hand. We are going to help you. But you must face what you've done. Back at the Meko house, Chief Meko returned from a business trip and was shattered by the news. My son. My only son, he muttered, holding Lottie close. How did we let this happen? The couple finally saw the truth. They had been too busy chasing success and forgot what mattered most. They called a child therapist the next day. Please, Madam Terra said over the phone. Help our son smile again. In the days that followed, Lady began therapy. He didn't speak much. He drew sad pictures. He avoided touch. The therapist looked at the parents and said, this will take time. But he can heal if you stay close. If you show him love every single day. And as for Zoe, her story was just beginning. A story of regret, reflection, and the long road toward redemption. Zoe was moved from the police cell to a juvenile rehabilitation center. It was a clean facility, quiet, with tall walls and plain rooms. The girls there came from different backgrounds, some from broken homes, some from violence, others like her, carrying heavy mistakes they couldn't undo. The judge, after reviewing the case and her age, ruled that Zoe would not be sent to prison. Instead, she would stay under close supervision at the center and undergo therapy and emotional education. The court believed she needed correction and guidance, not punishment alone. Zoe didn't argue. She didn't cry. She didn't speak unless asked to. Her guilt had built a wall around her, too thick for words to pass through. Meanwhile, back in Loduma, Lady's recovery had begun, but it was slow. His therapist, a kind and gentle woman named Auntie Keji, met with him 3 times a week. Each session started the same way, simple questions, soft toys, coloring pages. How are you feeling today, lady? He would just shrug or nod. Some days he didn't speak at all. Other days, he whispered a few words. But what stood out the most was his drawings, dark, empty houses, stick figures with no faces, and shadows with long hands. Chief Meko and Madam Terra made huge changes in their lives. They cut back their work hours. Hired a full-time therapist to guide them as parents. They now took turns dropping Lady at school and were always home by dinner. Phones were turned off during family time. The mansion that once echoed with silence was slowly being filled with music, laughter, and bedtime stories again. One evening, during dinner, Lady spoke clearly for the first time. Mama, will you stay with me till I sleep? Madam Terra's eyes filled with tears. Yes, my love. I will. She followed him to his room, sat beside him, and held his hand until he drifted off. For the first time in weeks, he didn't call away. He slept with peace on his face. Across the city, Z sat in a circle of girls at the center, each one taking turns talking to the counselor. When it came to her turn, Zoe hesitated. The counselor waited patiently. I didn't mean to hurt him, Zoe finally said. But I did. And I hate myself for it. The counselor nodded. Feeling guilty is a step. But healing means learning how to take responsibility and choosing to become better. Zoe spent months at the center. She attended therapy, wrote journals, studied, and spoke to teachers who helped her understand boundaries, emotions, and healthy ways to deal with loneliness. One day, she wrote a letter to Lady. Dear Lady, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if you'll read this. But I want you to know I'm sorry. I hate you. I was confused, lonely, and wrong. You didn't deserve any of it. I hope one day you feel safe again. I pray that your smile comes back. I'm trying to become a better person, not for myself, but because you deserve peace. Zoe. The letter was handed to Madame Terra, who read it silently. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She folded the letter and placed it in her drawer. Maybe one day, when Lady was older, he'd read it. Maybe not. But something had changed. Zoe had accepted her mistake. Lady had begun to heal. And the adults around them had learned what it truly meant to protect a child, not with money or gifts, but with time, presence, and love. 2 years later, the village of Numa, where Zoe was born, had changed. Parents who once believed our children know right from wrong, were now listening more closely. Teachers in the local school held open talks about emotions, consent, and respect. The church ran weekend programs for youth, teaching them how to handle feelings like loneliness, anger, and curiosity in healthy ways. All because of one painful story that had reached every corner of the community. Zoe had returned home, not the same girl who left, but someone quiet, thoughtful, and scarred by her past. People stared at her in the market. Some whispered. Some avoided her. But others saw the change in her. She didn't hide. She didn't shout. She simply began to serve. She started volunteering at a small children's home nearby, sweeping the floors, feeding toddlers, and playing simple games with kids who had no families. She never stayed alone with any child. She didn't trust herself to make that mistake again. She always worked under supervision. Slowly, she earned the trust of those around her. Zoe also returned to school, this time in a modest local secondary school. She kept her head low and focused on learning. Her parents never left her side again. They forgave her, though the pain never fully left their hearts. Your mistake doesn't define you, her mother once told her, holding her hand gently. But what you do after, that's what truly matters. Back in Loduma, Lady had grown stronger. His therapy sessions now included music, art, and even storytelling. He no longer flinched when someone reached for his hand. He laughed again, small burst of it, pure and beautiful. He had also started writing short stories. Simple tales about brave boys, magical forests, and gentle animals. But behind the lines, his pain still whispered. His parents kept their promise, never to be too busy for him again. One Sunday afternoon, Madame Terra took him to a youth gathering. A guest speaker had come to speak to parents and children about emotional safety. It was Auntie KG, Lady's former therapist. She spoke openly about healing, about forgiveness, and about the responsibility adults have to protect their children, not just from the world, but from silence. When she finished, a young girl came forward to share her own story, how she had almost hurt her little cousin, not knowing what she was doing was wrong, until her mother noticed and intervened. The room was quiet, listening not with judgment, but understanding. Because now, they knew better. Chief Mako stood and shared his experience too. We were rich in money, but poor in time. And that nearly cost us our son. The villagers clapped, not because they celebrated the past, but because they had finally opened their eyes. That night, as the stars blinked gently above the quiet homes of Numa and Loduma, two families rested differently. Zoe sat by her window, reading a book on child psychology. A soft breeze touched her face. She didn't know if Lady would ever forgive her. She didn't know if she even deserved it. But she had promised herself, never again would her pain become someone else's. And in the city, Lady finished the story and handed it to his mother. This one is about a lion cub who lost his roar but found it again with love, he said. Madame Terra hugged him tightly. That's a beautiful story, my son. In the end, the village didn't just remember what Zoe did. They remembered what they learned from it. And that lesson became a story passed from one family to another. A story that whispered. Watch your children. Listen to them. Guide them. And never let silence be louder than love.